I am Noah. Day 1. The doors closed at dawn. When the last beam slid into its socket, the world outside became only an echo, a sound sealed in wood. The hammer's final strike still rings in my skull, a heartbeat that does not belong to me. Behind the door, the earth, the cities, the faces that did not believe. Before me, a cavern of timber breathing in the dark. The air tastes of sap and salt. I listen, and there is nothing. Nothing but the soft whine of the hinges cooling, the whisper of rope settling. Silence, they say, is peace. But this silence is weight. It presses against my chest like the first layer of water against a drowning man's lungs. It is not the calm before the storm, it is the storm's shadow. The animals moved first. The elephants shuffled, testing the boards. The doves cooed, uneasy, as if sensing the world already dissolving behind them. Each sound was sharp, sacred, frightening in its clarity. When the world shrinks, even a feather falling sounds like thunder. My sons worked the torches. Cam's hands shook as he lit the wicks. Sem whispered a prayer he thought I could not hear. Ham counted supplies under his breath, like a trader denying fear by naming inventory. Their wives huddled together, skirts brushing sawdust, the smell of pitch clinging to their skin. My own wife stood apart, by the sealed door, her palm flat against it, as if feeling for a heartbeat on the other side. When she turned, her eyes were the color of wet stone. Outside, no rain yet, only clouds like mountains of bruises. The sky holds its breath. Inside, we do the same. I walk the length of the vessel. The ark creaks like an old ribcage remembering pain. We built her high and wide, but inside, she feels smaller than faith. Each stall is filled, every space accounted for pairs breathing, shifting, watching us with the suspicion of creatures who sense that men bring both shelter and death. Their heat fills the air. Their eyes follow. I pass them like a priest among unwilling congregants. Father, Sem calls softly. The pitch leaks near the oxen. I nod. Seal it again. Thicker. He obeys. No one argues. Not today. We speak little. Words make echoes, and echoes remind us that the world outside has none. By midday, the light turns copper. Through the upper slits, the first gusts arrive dry, charged, smelling of metal. Then a sound like distant applause. Rain touching the roof for the first time. A single drop slides through a crack and lands on my wrist. It burns colder than stone. The first tear of heaven. No one cheers. No one prays aloud. We simply look at one another, as if caught trespassing in God's work. The animals sense it before we do. The horses snort and stamp. The birds flutter and beat their wings against the cages. A ripple of motion spreads through the ark, a heartbeat awakening. Ham tries to calm them, voice shaking. It's just rain, he says, but his tone betrays that he knows this rain is unlike any that ever fell. Soon the sound grows, not a shower, but a siege. The roof drums beneath the assault. The walls vibrate. The smell of wet wood fills the lungs. I climb to the central beam and lay my hand on it. It trembles alive, like muscle. Lightning flashes through the slits, slicing the dimness into brief negatives. Each flash freezes us, the family, the beasts, the ropes, the barrels, a single tableau of obedience and terror. Then darkness again, thicker each time. I write while the ink runs thin and the parchment curls with damp. There is no use preserving clarity. These words are more for my soul than for memory. I write to remember what silence sounds like before it disappears beneath the deluge. Cam brings news. The lower pens flood already. Lift the bedding, I answer. Move what you can. He hesitates. Will it stop? No, I say. And the honesty hurts both of us. My wife places her hand on my shoulder. We do not speak. Her presence is the only proof that faith still has skin. Outside, the rain turns from sound to substance. It is no longer falling. It is devouring. Through the seams, the light dims to a twilight that never belonged to earth. The air thickens, breath becomes work. And still, the silence inside is heavier. The ark groans but does not scream. The people do not cry. Only the faint drip of water between boards marks time. I sit by the sealed door. I can almost feel the world beyond it, the soil softening, the first screams carried by wind, the animals that did not make it running in circles without direction. I pray not for them, but for mercy on us who survived them. Because survival, I realize, is not reward. It is responsibility. Sem kneels beside me. Father, what do we do now? I look at him, at his hands blackened with pitch. We wait. For what? For the world to forget how to breathe, I whisper. Then we begin again. He bows his head. The torches flicker. In their light, I see that the tears on his face are indistinguishable from the rain leaking through the roof. The first night of the flood begins not with thunder, but with the door behind me silent, unmoving, final. The rain has decided what it wants. It does not fall anymore. It arrives, as if the sky were a river turned downward. The ark shivers beneath it, and I feel the shiver in my teeth. We move as one body, sons, wives, beasts, wood. There is no inside or outside now, only layers of water and the small air between them where we try to live. I set the boys to their stations. Hem takes the lower corridor with the buckets, because he moves like a hinge, quick and sure. Cam checks the lashings on the heavier animals. He is strong enough to take a kick and proud enough not to mind the bruise. Sem keeps inventory and fire. His hands know how to count without losing gentleness. I walk the spine of the ark and pretend that makes her braver. The first true lift comes just after midday. Not a roll, but a heave, as if some huge hand slid beneath our keel and curled the fingers. The floor tilts like a thought nobody wants. Barrels thud, animals cry out, and a wash of panic races down the ribs of the ship. I brace against a post and feel the grain scrape my palm. Pitch seeps from the seams like black sap. It holds, but it weeps. Ballast, I shout. Shift to port slow. We do not have stones enough to argue with an ocean, but we have sacks of earth, crates of tools, our own bodies. We shoulder them across the deck like stubborn prayers. The ark writes herself, sulking but upright. She knows the language of weight. She answers weight with weight. A bull loses footing and comes down hard, the sound like a fault line cracking. Cam is on him, blade flashing, not to cut but to slice a rope and make a sling, to cradle the head until the animal can breathe past its fear. He speaks to it in nonsense syllables that sound, to my ear, like forgiveness. The bull's eyes roll white, then find the world again. I nod to Cam, and he does not see it, which is good. I am grateful without witness. The birds are a storm within the storm. The smaller ones batter their cages with wings that know only two options, flee or fall. Sem drapes cloth over the fronts to dim the world. It works. When the world grows smaller, a creature can survive it. The doves come first, then the quarrelsome geese, finally the hawks, who glare at me as if I have insulted the idea of sky. Perhaps I have. Water finds every story the wood remembers. It snakes along old scars left by chisels and hammers, gathers at the lowest seam, drops with a patience I envy. Ham lays pans beneath the worst leaks and measures the rhythm, guessing at the weakness above. This one every 6 heartbeats, he says. That one every 2. He is right. I check without letting him see me check. Men need their rightness to stand between them and despair. My wife tears a long strip from her shawl and braids it through the slats to wick the drip away from a straw bed. She ties the ends with the knot I taught her when we were young, and I was foolish enough to think rope belonged to men. She catches me smiling and does not ask why. We both know. Something thumps against the hull and skates along it with a grating moan. We freeze. Another thump, heavier, nearer the bow. Timbers from a house, Ham says. Or a tree torn up. I do not answer. The third thump is softer, with a hollow to it, and then a fourth. A softer hollow still. A set of pots, perhaps. A door. A cradle. The ark does not slow to consider. She cannot. Mercy has weight, and we are already carrying all we can. The air changes. It thickens with the breath of the beasts and the steam of their bodies. The rain hammers sense out of the roof, and the world becomes percussion. Every word must be shouted to matter. Every shout feels like an injury to the silence we are failing to keep between us, and the voice that sent us here. Sem touches my arm. The fire is sulking, he says. The lamp flame crouches low, licking instead of standing. Smoke has nowhere to climb, and keeps returning to the nose that exhaled it. Feed her little, I say. flatter her. We cannot afford smoke or sulks. He smiles in spite of himself, and coaxes the flame with a leaf of resin and a curl of shavings as tender as bread to a sick child. The flame remembers why it exists and stands a finger taller. Small victories are still victories. A goat births early, frightened into labor by thunder. It happens between two stalls. A small wet life issued into a world already drowning. My wife and Cam attend. I keep watch, because there is no dignity in a man like me admitting he fears how fragile beginnings look. The kid arrives with a noise less than a sneeze and kicks at the air, instantly offended by it. Cam rubs it with rough cloth until the tiny legs learn their work. The mother turns and makes the low moan of recognition I have heard from every creature that has ever decided to keep living. The sound cuts cleanly through the rain. It is the only thing today that does. By late afternoon, the ark has learned the pattern of the waves, and they have learned hers. She rises enough to forgive, falls enough to remember. The flood is young and strong. We are old and stubborn. It is a fair match so far. But the seams complain, and my knuckles bleed pitch, and the animals who have known only open places now learn the taste of walls. There is a pain that belongs to edges. We have chosen it for them. The choice burns even when it is right. I permit myself to sit and write for 7 breaths. That is all. I count them as I lay the letters down, carving more than drafting. The wood keeps the record as well as any page. Perhaps better, for she is the witness. I write what I will need to reread if Dawn does not forgive me. We held. We answered weight with weight. We did not let panic break the rope that binds man to man. Ham arrives with news he does not want to carry. The lower corridor is a river, he says. We can bail, but the water thinks faster than we do. I nod. We do not need to win, I tell him. We need to not lose. He squints at me, then grins despite himself. Then we are very good at not losing. He goes back to his buckets. The water does not learn humility, but we do. There is a moment, how long? I do not know, when the rain and the sea and the shaking and the cries fall into alignment and become a single sound. It is not noise. It is a chord, ugly, holy, enormous. It climbs the ribs of the ark and lays a hand on my face and says, without words, I am not only wrath. I choose to believe that. If I do not choose now, when the choosing matters, then I am a coward in a prophet's coat. I make the rounds again. A fox has chewed at its cage and bloodied its mouth for the right to a freedom that will kill it. I talk to it until the teeth unclench and the eyes become eyes again, not knives. A camel kneels and refuses to rise. I kneel with it, and after 2 breaths, the beast decides that a man foolish enough to kneel in a flood deserves a companion. We stand, both of us surprised. The little miracles are the ones that practice for the large. Near the door, where I am most tempted to be, my wife has laid 2 blankets and a jar of water we cannot afford to drink yet. She pats the boards as if they were the flank of a frightened mare. Through the wood, the rain has a different voice, less like spears, more like 1,000 fingertips tapping 1,000 clocks. Time will not be hurried, it tells me. It will not be slowed. It will be itself, and you must be yourselves inside it. I do not argue. I lack the breath. Sem returns with the splinter in his thumb as long as a thorn. He tries to pull it with his teeth and fails. I take his hand and work the point free with the tip of my knife. A dot of blood beads and blooms. He laughs, shakes his hand, and says, "Proof of living." I answer, "Proof of building." He pockets the splinter as if it were a relic. The storm has a pulse that is not mine, and I learn to count by it. Between pulses I hear other things. The soft delirium of the sheep, the complaint of a hinge, Ham's muttering arithmetic, Cam's occasional curse, soft and honest, like a man confessing he is made of clay. My wife humming the little tune she used to hush our sons when they were new to air. The tune is older than we are, perhaps older than water. I allow myself a thought unworthy of a righteous man. I want the door to open, not to flee, to prove that the world is still there to be fled from. The thought leaves me ashamed and then stronger. I speak it to God without polishing it, and the answer I receive is a wave that lifts us and sets us down without breaking anything that cannot be mended. This is how He answers most of my honest prayers. Dusk is not truly darker than noon, but it feels like it is, because hope is a light that flies toward the west at the end of the day, and we are too slow to catch its tail. We trim the lamps and set watches, pretending that the flood obeys clocks. I give first watch to Cam because his restlessness does not sleep anyway. Second watch to Ham because numbers come to him in the quiet hours. Third to Sem because he will use the solitude to write what I do not see. I sit, and the ark sits with me, and I write again because it is the one work that does not leak back out through the cracks. I write to the child I was when the first warning came, the boy with the laugh too loud, the hands too sure, the eyes that could not imagine a door that would have to close on everything he loved. I tell him we did close it. I tell him we stayed by it afterward and did not go mad. I tell him silence is not empty. It is full of God if you let it be. The rain increases, then tires, then increases again, like a giant learning to breathe through sorrow. The ark groans and sighs and tells her own story without words. I was a tree once, many trees, and I drank sky one leaf at a time. Now, drink with my whole body. Hold fast. I lay my cheek against her and say what I have learned to say to wood and beast and son and wife and self. We are together. That is the plan. When I close my eyes, I see the door as it was at dawn, when we sealed it. The mark of my palm is still on the pitch where I pressed to feel if it would hold. The print looks like a fossil of a faith that could fit inside a hand. Tonight my faith is too large to hold and too small to live without. That is how it should be on the first day of the end and the first day of the beginning. I am Noah. Day 1 continues. The doors are closed. The rain has found us. The silence is heavier, but it no longer sits on my chest. It sits beside me, steadying my breath like a friend who knows not to speak. The world has forgotten the shape of afternoon. Dusk slid past us like a seal in black water, and now there is only the wet dark and the hammering above. The lamps bend their flames to the wind that cannot reach them, and the shadows reel with every lift and fall. I feel the ark learning a new grammar. She conjugates the verb to endure in every tense at once. The sea has found its voice. It does not roar. It converses and heaves. A swell shouldered us broadside an hour ago, and the whole house turned a fraction beyond comfort. That angle where memory insists that floors are supposed to be floors and not hillsides. A chorus of buckets, hooves, claws, and rope followed. We did not break. We bent. The older I grow, the more I trust things that bend. Cam made his watch into a patrol. He will not sit when he can circle. I hear his footfall before I see him. He moves like an argument that refuses to end in anger. He stops at each stall, touches the lashings, murmurs a syllable that could be a prayer or a promise. When he reaches me, he does not report. He leans his shoulder to the post I'm bracing and lends it his strength, as if posts appreciate companionship. Perhaps they do. He smells of wet leather and pitch, and the clean fear of a man who has decided the work is larger than the fear. Ham has begun to count the rain. He says there are long phrases to it. 1, 2, 3, a volley. 1, a pause, then a roar. 13 no. 14 heartbeats between the flash and the blow. He does this to make a map no eye can draw. He thinks in measures and angles, and I let him, because numbers are the last dry place for certain minds. When he pauses, he presses his hand to the hull as a physician listens to the lung of a friend. She is strong, he says once, without asking for agreement. I agree anyway. Sem writes. He has found a calm patch of wall near the lamp, and sits with the splinter pen and soot in a shallow dish. He inks the day in lines so thin that I want to shield them with my body from the breath of a wave. He does not look up when thunder throws plates from shelves of air. I envy that kind of attention. It is how God made light. He will show me later, if the pages survive, and I will not say that I cannot bear to read them yet. My wife has made a country out of 2 blankets, 3 ropes, a jar, and the steady place beside the sealed door. She rules there without decree. The animals lower their heads as they pass. The children weave in and out, bringing her the small tributes of a besieged people. A dry rag, a piece of bread saved and not eaten, a feather that found its way under a foot and survived. She accepts each gift as if it were a treaty and returns a touch to the brow, the hair, the cheek. I have seen kings bless less faithfully, a lull not silence, only a lessening, and the ark inhales as if to speak. In the space of that breath, a memory rises honest. The field where I first told a man what I had heard from God. He laughed and spat, and asked if the sky had elected me its carpenter. I remember how hard it was to keep my own face from agreeing with him. I remember building anyway. I tell that boy in the memory that he did well to let the laugh pass through him and go. I tell him he will need that same hollow space inside, again and again, tonight most of all. The lull ends as all mercies do, with the test to prove it happened. The roof pounds. Something heavy glances off the hull and bounces away. For a long breath, I think of bodies. The thought arrives, stands in the doorway, and leaves. I cannot house it. There is room only for the living, and only because they share it. A ewe has wedged her hoof into a crevice and cannot free it. Her eyes show too much white, and she makes the small, hopeless sound that shames the word hopeless for ever having met such dignity. Sem is there first, gentle, sure. He slides his hand along the leg, finds the joint, waits for the wave to lift us, turns at the crest, and draws the hoof free as the ark falls. The ewe crumples, then stands. A minute later she is a mother again, and not a symbol of the world's end. We praise no one aloud, but I see the praise. It sits on the air like an unseen bird. The birds, yes, them. They have turned their fear into order. After the first hours of wing and panic, they discovered each other as birds do, by repeating what the species remembers. Pairs tuck their beaks under the same wing. A hawk stares out through a seam so thin, and not believe and I can focus there. I fancy it sees the shape of wind. The doves sleep the way small fires sleep, coals under ash, ready. A fox, losing to confinement, has gnawed until its gums bleed. Cam offers it meat and frowns at the refusal. He sits beside the cage and begins to tell it the story of a river that went backwards one spring because the mountain commanded it. I have never told that tale to a fox before. Neither has Cam. The fox stops chewing because the river is trying to remember how its own bed once felt under thaw. When Cam finishes, the animal licks the bars, not in hunger, but as if tasting the metal that kept it from unlearning breathing. We do not deserve animals. We deserve to learn from them. Thunder makes a decision toward midnight. It stops being a show of power and becomes a metronome for courage. Between its strokes, work arranges itself. We find the leak that was hiding under the squeal of a donkey's tether. We pad the corner where barrels bruise. We move the children to a place where the roll is less deceptive. I discover that my body has memorized the ark's new gait. I know when to bend the knee before I have seen the wave. This is Grace's practical cousin, Craft. I go to the door because I cannot not. I lay my palm where I laid it this morning, and the pitch is cooler now, settled into its own resolve. I do not press as if to open. I press as if to confess. We did it, I say to the wood, to the night, to the God who authored both. We shut out what begged to be let in. The sentence sits heavy. I cannot lighten it with explanation. Mercy always looks like cruelty from the wrong side of the door. I pray for eyes that can remember the right side when the wailing comes back to me in sleep. The children sleep in pieces, like a loaf torn by many hands and reassembled by hunger. One has a knuckle between teeth. One dreams with both hands open, catching rain that cannot reach her. One mutters numbers in the language of lambs. I cover them and count again. The old game that mothers and fathers play when the world has reminded them how mortal skin is. Each number is a promise I have no power to keep. I speak them anyway. It is what fathers are for when thunder is king. Hem wakes me from a thought with a statement that is not a question. The water outside and the water inside do not want the same things. He is right. The water outside wants the world leveled to its idea of fairness. The water inside wants to serve. I ask him, which water are you? He considers, then touches the rim of a bucket. This one, he says, and grins. Pride is not always sin. Sometimes it is a belt that keeps a man's courage fastened. There is a moment I cannot say when that my mind breaks the day into two countries. Before thunder learned our names, and after. In the after country, fear sits at the table like a cousin who won't stop visiting. We pour it tea, We ask it not to wipe its mouth on the curtains, and we carry on. We carry on because the table is not only fears, it is also works and gratitudes, and the kind of laughter that does not need permission. Sem brings me one page and places it in my hands like a fragile animal. Read later, he says, or now. Later frightens you more. I tuck it into my mantle. Later is a wilderness tonight. I will cross it with company. A pause where there should be thunder. I look up, unsure whether to celebrate or brace. The pause lengthens. The ark seems to stand taller inside it. The animals lift their heads. Ham's hands stop counting. Cam's patrol halts mid-step. Sem's pen hovers. My wife's humming finds a note that is more rest than tone. We listen to the gap between blows and find, to our astonishment, that it is not empty. Something like patience breathes there. Something like presence without performance. I am afraid to speak into it, but I do. We hear you, I say, not knowing whether the you is the God who warned me or the silence that asks for our best selves. The answer is not thunder. It is a soft slap of wave against plank. Affectionate, the way a friend punctuates a joke and reminds you that you are favored. Tears surprise me. I do not wipe them. Salt knows its way around a sailor. Cam leans his head against the post and says, I thought the first night would break us. I answer, perhaps it has. Perhaps the pieces know each other better now. Ham chuckles. Leave it to father to bless a fracture. Sem adds, good wood is stronger where it's joined. My wife, eyes closed, smiles, and I know we are still a family, not yet a crowd of survivors. This matters more than any measurement of cubits or stores. A final labor from the sky rolls over us, not as rage, but as insistence. We bow to it together, the way wheat bows to wind and calls the motion prayer, because it keeps the stalk supple. When it passes, the roof still drums, but with a different hand. The ark answers with a lower groan, like an elder settling in the chair that fits him best. I take the pen. I insist on calling this soot and splinter a pen, because tonight, I need the dignity of the word, and I set down what must not be lost when memory stutters. The doors closed. The rain discovered our names. The silence, heavier than any water, sat with us and did not drown us. We worked. We did not argue with the sea. We negotiated. We failed to save what could not be saved, and did not die of that failure. We listened for a voice between blows, and found it. It did not excuse us. It accompanied us. I am Noah. Night has taken the measure of us, and we have learned a little of its language. When the fourth watch comes, I will hand this pen to Sem, and let him record the hour when even thunder sleeps. If it never sleeps, then we will. And if sleep will not come, we will lie still, and let the ark dream us into morning. The sea has stopped arguing. It mumbles now, as if embarrassed by its own fury. The rain thins until it is only mist. The mist becomes breath. I can hear, through the beams, the small noises of survival, a hoof scuff, a snore, the creak of rope easing. The ark drifts without direction, which is a kind of direction when the world has none. I light a lamp and sit by the central post. Smoke rises straight for the first time in hours. My hands are cracked from pitch, my eyes grainy with salt. The pages before me are streaked where drops have fallen, salt on soot. They look like a map drawn by someone who had to invent the continents as he went. Sem stirs beside me, half awake. Father, is it over? No, Elham, but it is resting. He nods and goes back to whatever dream keeps him gentle. I envy him the ability to meet peace halfway. Cam and Ham sleep against opposite walls, mirror images without knowing it. My wife lies with the children in the blanket country she built. The youngest has her fist wrapped around a bit of my hair torn loose in the day's work. I leave it there. Possession is comfort. Outside, the clouds are tearing open. Not to reveal stars, there are none, but to reveal that there will be stars again. The night air that slips through the seams is colder, cleaner. It smells of beginnings. I think of the door behind me. It stands the way a tombstone stands. Firm, necessary, unreadable from the side of the living. We hammered it shut in obedience, and yet part of me waits for it to knock. I run my palm over the pitch, and feel how smooth it has become. The rain polished even our guilt. A faint groan runs through the hull. Wood swelling, then settling. The sound is like an old man clearing his throat to speak wisdom he does not wish to waste on the young. I listen anyway. Perhaps the ark has already started preaching and we, her congregation, are too tired to take notes. I look at the ink-dark water through a crack and imagine the hills under it, fields, trees, doorways, memory itself submerged. Somewhere down there lies the first altar I ever built. I wonder if the stones still hold heat from sacrifices long gone. Maybe heat rises through water as prayer does through doubt. A sudden hush, even the wind pauses. The ark tilts in a slow bow, acknowledging something immense and unseen. In that quiet, I finally hear what has been beneath every roar, the rhythm of God breathing. It is not thunder that has carried us. It is that breath. The realization is too large to keep, so I set it down in the simplest words I know. He is still here. I wake Ham for his watch. He rubs his eyes and asks, "What should I look for?" "Not danger," I say. "Just look." "For what?" "For proof that we can." He laughs softly, then stands, shoulders squared. The lamp behind him makes a long, steady shadow. A man becomes his own lighthouse that way. I return to the page. The ink pulls differently now, obedient to a steadier hand. The ark rocks like a cradle, and I remember that every cradle is a small boat, and every boat a question. Will this life reach shore? I answer it the only way faith knows how, by continuing to breathe. Toward what must be morning, the rain stops. The absence of sound startles me more than its presence ever did. Silence again, but lighter now. It no longer presses, it lifts. I open the upper vent a finger's width. A ribbon of air snakes in, cold enough to sting. I taste it, metal, sky, mercy. From below comes a sound so soft, I think I imagined it. The bleat of the newborn goat. It is hungry, alive, insistent. I go down and find it nosing at its mother, tiny flanks quivering. My wife smiles without waking fully. "Even here," she murmurs. "Life refuses to wait." I nod. That is the whole sermon. I climb back up as the first gray hints of light slip through the mist. The world smells washed, as if every injustice had been rinsed for one impossible instant. I know better, but knowing does not spoil the fragrance. The family begins to stir. Ham checks his buckets. Cam tightens a rope. Sem stretches his fingers over the soot pages. Each gesture is ordinary and therefore holy. Routine is faith dressed in work clothes. I write the final lines for this day, for whatever eyes may someday find them pressed between boards or bones. Day 1. The doors closed, and we did not die of it. The rain came, and we learned its rhythm. The world drowned, and still we breathed. The silence returned, and this time it did not frighten us. I set down the pen and whisper to the wood, "Hold us." The ark answers with a long, low creak, the sound of obedience meeting endurance. Outside, something vast exhales. Inside, we do the same. I am Noah. Day 1 ends. The doors are closed. The silence is lighter than the rain.